if you're feeling like your craft stuff is taking over, your fabric is everywhere, you don't have time to be creative because it takes too much energy to prep a spot for your creativity to be expressed, maybe it's time for a craft room purge. Today, I'm here to share with you some great tips to help you have a successful purge and overhaul of your craft space, and to make sure that you get the most out of the time you set aside for clearing out the old and making room for new inspiration and new materials. I'm Amy from Amorini Designs. Thank you so much for joining me today. The first tip that I have when it comes to purging and getting rid of your craft stuff is to make sure that you give yourself plenty of time to get it done. Now, you want to make sure that you're setting some parameters here because this is a job that can be really overwhelming. If you're like me, you have a lot of things. So you want to make sure that you have plenty of time to touch all the things that you need to touch in your craft room or your sewing room, and make sure that you can look at everything and clear everything out and organize it how you want, but you also don't want it to drag on forever, right? So I really like to spend maybe a weekend. If you're doing a really thorough deep clean of absolutely every drawer and nook and cranny, maybe you want to give yourself a week, but try to set a deadline and maybe give yourself a hard out at the other end. Maybe there's a project you want to work on, and so you're going to give yourself a certain amount of time to get it done so you can do that project. Or set up a deadline for the donation day, or, if you have a neighborhood cleanup or a neighborhood free swap kind of a thing, maybe you give yourself a hard out at the end of it to make sure that you hold yourself accountable to that timeline. And that leads me to the next tip that I have for you, and that is to have somewhere for all your stuff to go. It's so much easier to be generous with purging and eliminating and parting with some of these awesome, great supplies and fabrics that you have if you know that someone on the other end is going to be so excited to have them. Maybe there's a charity near you who does quilting bees and makes quilts for charity to donate to different projects. Perhaps there's a youth group or a after-school program near you that could use the extra donations. If you have a place that you know somebody is super excited about, it makes it really easy to let go of those things that are no longer serving you. Because sometimes we have this sunken cost fallacy where we know we've spent so much money on it. We really love the thing. That's why we got it in the first place. There's a lot of reasons why it's really hard to let stuff go. But if you know you're being generous and you're giving it to somebody who's super excited to have it and use it, it makes it a little less painful to part with all the things. The third tip I have is to recruit some help. My favorite person to do this with is my sister. She gets what I do, she gets what I love, but she's not as invested in it as me. So she is my voice of reason. When I say I really need it or I really love it, she backs off and lets me keep it. But if it's something that she can tell I'm on the fence about, she gives me that extra nudge that I need to just let it go. So having a person there to help you kind of talk through things, to really hold you to the boundaries that you set or the things that you're trying to accomplish, it's really helpful to have that voice of reason to help you. And not only that, but it's a lot of work and it's way more fun if you're doing it with somebody else. The next tip that I have for you is to set some boundaries with the amount of space that you are taking up. So, for example, I love seasonal fabrics. I think they are so much fun to sew with. I love to create different projects with them. So I tend to have a lot of them. What I have started doing is I set aside one tote. It's a medium-sized tote, and that is all of the space that I allow for that season's fabrics. When I get more fabric in, say new Christmas fabric, it gives me a reason to go through and get rid of some of the older things that maybe I thought I would love and use but haven't yet, and so I can make room for new stuff. So if you set some boundaries and some parameters, it makes it much easier to actually get rid of those things and only choose your favorite things. My fifth and final tip is to start easy. So if you know for sure that there's things that you absolutely are totally ready to get rid of, start with those. Move them out of your space, get them gone, and it will give you some momentum and a great push to keep going, because you'll feel that lightness, and that space will open up, and then it will help kind of fuel that motivation to keep going and to keep getting rid of things. I am in the middle of a move, and so this is a great time for me because I have to touch everything anyway. And so I am following all of these 5 tips to try to help me, and I'm actually hoping to purge about half of my craft supply, sewing supply, because I'm downsizing my storage space in the new space a little bit, and I want to have a different setup where I'm heading to. And so in order to do that, I've got to make room. So hopefully these tips will help me, and hopefully they will help you to let go of some things, create some lightness in your space, and open up for more inspiration. So until I see you next time, happy sewing, my friends, and let's stay creative and clean out those craft spaces.